This is Mrs. Kersing here, and we're going to talk about relationships between different organisms. There's a fancy word for a relationship between two different species, and that's symbiosis. So symbiosis is when any two organisms of a different species, so not a human and a human or a dog and a dog, but maybe a human and a dog, have some sort of relationship with one another. And there's three types of these relationships. There's mutualism, parasitism, and commensalism. Mutualism is a relationship between two species that's good for both. Okay, that's why I put two positives. It's good for both of the organisms. An example of this is a bee and a flower. You might say, well, what does the bee get from the relationship? In this relationship, the bee gets food. It gets pollen. And the flower benefits because it's pollinated by the bee. The bee helps it to reproduce. So that's beneficial to both organisms, and that's mutualism. Parasitism is a relationship where it's beneficial for one and negative for the other one. So it's good for one and bad for the other. A good example of this is a tick and a human. If you think about a tick, the tick gets food, the blood, from a human, but the human can get diseases and a nasty sore from the tick. And our last type of relationship is commensalism. Commensalism is a relationship that's beneficial for one and neutral for the other. I put the zero because zero is not positive or negative. So a relationship like this is sometimes hard to find, but an example is birds nesting in a tree. The tree's not really harmed in any way by the birds, unless the birds are, pecking at the tree or something. And the birds are able to get a home or habitat or shelter. So that's beneficial for the birds, but not beneficial or negative for the tree. Another type of relationship is one in which one organism eats another organism. A prey is the animal that gets eaten, and the predator is the animal that eats the other animal. Okay, so the predator eats the prey. In this example, we have a lion and a gazelle. The lion eats the gazelle, so the lion is the predator, and the gazelle is the prey. Now, something interesting about predators and prey is that if the number of prey increases, so if the lion has more food, the lion will be better able to survive and reproduce, and so the number of predators, or the number of lions, will increase if there's more gazelles. But if the number of lions increases, they're going to eat all the gazelles, and so the number of gazelles will decrease. So if the number of predators increases, we'd expect the number of prey to eventually decrease. And we can see this in this graph right here. We're plotting the number of living things on one side, so the number of lions or the number of gazelles, and then time on our x-axis right here. So I use purple for the lion and red for the gazelle. As you'll see, over time, they have a cyclical relationship. They go up and down, and it turns out that they go up and down in response to one another. So when we have more gazelles, there's more food for the lions, so their population also increases. But as the number of lions increases, we'd expect the number of gazelles to decrease because the gazelles are getting eaten. But if the number of gazelles decreases to a certain point, there's not enough food for the lions anymore, and so their population will decrease. Okay? Now, if the number of lions decreases, there's less lions eating the gazelles, so the gazelles' population is going to increase again. Okay? And so that's more food for the lions, so the lion population increases again. So you see there's this cyclical relationship. So we expect them to oscillate or move in this wavy form on a graph to balance out one another. Now, if there were no lions, and there's no other predators for the gazelles, the gazelle population might grow like crazy. It might just keep growing and growing and growing. Think about the deer in North Carolina. There's a lot of deer in North Carolina because there's not a lot of natural predators, and we have some limits on deer hunting. So the number of deer can just increase exponentially. If you'll remember from our population ecology videos, the J-curve is when a population is increasing because resources are unlimited and there's no predator that's eating those organisms. So if there was no lion to eat the gazelle population might increase like a J-curve or exponentially. And that's a problem in North Carolina because obviously those deer eat people's food in their yard, and people can get seriously injured when they hit a deer on the highway or on the road. So just remember that whenever you see a population graph that's oscillating right like this, it's probably a predator-prey graph.